I don't know. What do we call Newman and Redford? What are they? The gentlemen of our time? What are they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody else.
What about Leonardo DiCaprio?
Nah, he's been huffing his own farts a bit too much.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
Each week, we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you like to sell the movies we have covered, we'll cover one. To choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. Thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all our information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you would like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
Gene, just like in the real world, deployments seem to stack up. Last week, we thought we got out of Lebanon intact. We survived. We lost PD along the way. But guess what, Gene? We got the call again. Uncle Sam's calling us back. We're going back to the Middle East for our second tour of duty in as many weeks. For Dalen, our two-time commissioner now, just sent in a new commission, to review the 1999 black comedy war film, Three Kings.
Dalen, I appreciate the vote of confidence, giving us a second commission before we've even done your first one. Thanks for the support. Dalen wrote in and said, Dear Shat Crew, I, like most of your listeners, have been enjoying your podcast for years. For me, it is a nice escape on my daily commute. I typically start an episode on my way to work, and then I listen to the overall take and wipe score on my journey home. It's a nice way to delay the satisfaction of knowing where the movie landed on the all-time rankings list. I've enjoyed seeing how polished the Shat podcast have become over the years. Wow. Many congrats on crafting the perfect formula for a nostalgia review show. Every segment of your show is entertaining and does an exceptional job of conjuring up all the best memories of the movies you review. I am an Air Force veteran in my 40s from Texas. About 15 years ago, I migrated to the Midwest, and I've slowly become more domesticated by my wife and kids ever since. The rest is just boring details. When people ask me where I'm from, I will still emphatically say Texas, and I will always have my Southern roots. Ash's take on each movie reminds me of the conversations I'd had with my friends growing up. We would often leave the theater, hit up a Taco Bell, and dissect what we just watched. She does a great job of picking apart the plot holes and character flaws of the movies, and I'm usually in full agreement with her scores. Big D's references to his military days are always topics that sound very familiar to me and bring back that time of my life. He is also a family man who loves all the same action movies for the same dumb reasons I do. And then there's Gene. What's not to love? His thoughts are dark. His past is shady as fuck, and his humor is perverse and non-traditional. A true spirit animal for me. Speaking of Gene, I would be remiss not to mention his now infamous Bram Stoker's Dracula sleeping bag self-exploration after-party story. Wow. When Gene was describing his personal exploration while his friends were sleeping, I was laughing so much I almost couldn't see. I envisioned that one of your friends was actually staring at the ceiling the whole time, wondering what the fuck you were doing and when you would stop. And hopefully they're still using therapy to cope to this day. Well, let's get on to the movie. After a couple of years of pondering what would be a great commission movie, I was afraid that all the best movies were gone, but then I struck bullion. I was in my basement cleaning out old DVDs and came across the gem that is Three Kings. The forgotten 1999 Desert Storm gold bar heist movie starring George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, and Ice Cube. I remember it for its humor and solid moral dilemmas, all while using the Gulf War as its backdrop. I recall it being unapologetic from the beginning. Never before or since have I seen a movie open with an explanation that the bleached background is on purpose and there is no need to adjust your settings. I also remember how oddly informative and original the cutscenes were. They do animation of what happens to one's internal organs from a gunshot wound that is narrated by George Clooney, and it should have been Oscar worthy. Maybe the third act is where things fell apart for this art piece, but I feel it had a solid enough landing to hold up. I'm cautiously optimistic that this movie will hit at the right moments for each of you and actually score pretty high on the all-time list. It is fast-paced and military-themed with plenty of deployment tropes for Big D. For Gene, it has quirky and dark humor, witty dialogue, and a solid ensemble cast. And as for Ash, it has George Clooney humping, Marky Mark running shirtless, and Ice Cube explaining Louis Vuitton bags. What more could she want? I have no idea if this movie will hold up now, so that's why I'm leaving it up to the Shat experts. Cheers to everything y'all do, and thank you again for all your work, Dalen.
So, Gene, he forgot you were also an Air Force veteran.
That's true. The AZ-861st Air Force Junior ROTC Cadet Major, Gene Lyons.
And I think, he mentioned your legendary sleeping bag exploration. I think you probably did give someone PTSD. I'm thinking more about the sound. The Silkies, it must have sounded like zzz, 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 like the fabric, and someone is staring off into the distance, trying not to look.
Dalen, as a bonus just for you to this episode, I have found a VHS tape from that night. It is not me in the sleeping bag, but is from that sleepover. We were doing skits earlier, and I found those, so I will publish those to the Shat YouTube. Brace yourself. It is genius, and there are a lot of butts.
Wow.
Three Kings is a 1999 war dark comedy starring George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, Ice Cube, and Spike Jonze as four American soldiers on a gold heist that takes place in Iraq following the end of the first Gulf War. So, Big D, as the fellow veteran, I imagine Dalen would want to hear from you first. What are your memories of this movie?
So I'll go back. I'll tell you my brief history in the military. So I joined in February of 99. This film came out in October at the end of the year. And it was one of the many military films I remember watching. When you're in the Army or any of the branches, you want to go see the films because you sit there with your friends afterwards and you dissect the action. I remember going to see the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and we spent hours breaking down what was the minimal force and what type of weapon systems would we need to defend Helm's Deep. And we would sit there for hours, and it was fun. Watching these movies, whether it was Black Hawk Down, We Were Soldiers, even shit like U-571, which I think had Bon Jovi in it, or the Mel Gibson historical war film, The Patriot or Enemy at the Gates. A lot of the films around this time were perfectly timed for me in the Army. And then later on the next year was the first time I had some money. I was living off post, so I had a little extra money. And there's the base PX, the exchange, and I was able to buy a DVD player and a few DVDs. Famously, one was Armageddon, which I already discussed, and the other was The Three Kings. At the time, I probably thought this was like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is great. Yeah, we're going to see some shit blow up, people get shot. But I don't think I understood the real message of the film. So going back now, I think I could appreciate what the film was trying to convey about the war itself and about war in general.
I know I saw this movie as a teenager, but I do not remember much about it other than the opening shooting scene. In about 2008, I was having a conversation with my cousin who said that he was an extra in The Kingdom, starring Jamie Foxx. I thought he was talking about Three Kings, so I went back and watched it because my cousin's about my age. So I was like, oh, he must have been like a teenager in this movie. Turns out, no, he was in The Kingdom. So if you watch that, you can see Gene Lyons' cousin, but he was not in Three Kings, which is a very different movie. Both are worth watching. I think this one's a little bit better.
Yeah, I remember there's something about they blow up an ambulance to try to draw in. It's Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Right? And they draw in all the ambulances and the first responders, and then the real explosion goes off. And it's more of a forensic breakdown of trying to figure out who had done it, how it happened. Different film.
Surprisingly more laughs.
Really? Well, I wouldn't be surprised at this point. With Jamie Foxx, now you don't know what you might get going back and watching him.
Let's hit the trailer.
Hot water makes soup?
No, not the little cubes you put in hot water to make soup.
Stay back!
Orders from President Bush. You open that door now. Where's the gold? Saddam stole it from the sheiks. I have no problem stealing it from Saddam. Did you inform this gentleman we need a vehicle of some kind?
Cannot take. We definitely take.
Many nations, working together. God bless America, and God bless a free Iraq. Now, what do you say, my friend?
Cannot give car.
Okay, I guess we'll buy them.
No, baby.
Following the end of the Gulf War, U.S. soldiers are sent to tie up loose ends. While searching an Iraqi officer, U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class Troy Barlow and Private First Class Conrad Vig find a map in the officer's anus. Troy goes to Chief Elgin to help translate the map, and Special Forces Major Archie Gates convinces the soldiers that the document is a map of bunkers near Karbala containing gold bullion stolen from Kuwait, which they decide to steal in turn. To keep reporter Adriana Cruz off his back, Archie Gates orders Specialist Walter Wogeman to drive her around the desert on a false lead.
So, Gene, just hearing you read that block, our listeners have to know. Three Kings, it's a little bit different. It's not your traditional war film. It's not Delta Force. It's not any of the more serious films we've done recently, but it's exactly how I remember it. It's funny, it's dark, it's sharp. It is completely different than any war movie I think I'd seen at that point. It opens up and it is perfectly toned. It is hilarious. It is dark. Wahlberg's unit, I think they're reservists. They're out there stumbling around the desert, and you're seeing all of their little groups with quick cuts. There's an Iraqi soldier who's up on a hill, and he's most likely he is surrendering. And instead of handling this professionally like we expect, it turns into hijinks. You got Mark Wahlberg, whose character's Barlow. He's like, hey, are we shooting people now? And he's like, I don't know. One of the guys has sand in his eye. It is completely unprofessional. He shoots the guy. And instead of the dramatic weight of this death, immediately we start getting cuts of the entire rest of the crew. They are having a party. They're pissing into the tubes in the sand. They're having water fights. They're jumping on those bladders of water. They're lifting weights. It is a beach party in the desert. And then you just mix in the reporters, and you're thinking this is going to be about the American heroes, but they treat it like spring break. It is unexpected, and it is setting you to know that this film is going to have a message that's very different than the traditional flag-waving Delta Force, fuck yeah.
I should set the table for listeners who either weren't alive during the first Gulf War or don't remember what it was all about, just so we understand this movie a little bit better. Because what Big D described is absolutely true. But let's talk about the first Gulf War. Iraq had invaded Kuwait, and the U.S., having been in wars like Vietnam, where we were trying to occupy and sort of nation build, was not interested in that role. So the story that we were sold as Americans was that we were going over there to liberate Kuwait, and we were not attacking Iraq or trying to topple Saddam Hussein's government, right? It was just kicking them out of Kuwait. And so this war was pretty fast because Iraq wasn't going to fight over Kuwait. They're like, all right, peace, we're out of here. And that's where it ended. So you had this deployment of lots of troops, both full-time and reservists, who got there and found out there was nothing to really do. And they weren't really particularly well trained for any sort of like policing. We see in this movie how clumsy they are about disarming and taking prisoners. That was not something they were necessarily proficient at.
No, and it's a weird thing to think that people want to go to combat. You want to go to war. But when you're in the military, and I served in the beginning in a time of peace, and you can tell who's been to combat because they have a combat patch on their sleeve. So you can see what unit they deployed with. At this point, when I joined, there were very few people with combat patches because they had retired and left. So people were like, yes, I want a chance to go to combat. I want to earn my stripes. I want to be the war hero like maybe Grandpa was in World War II. And it was so quick, Gene, that people were like, what? where was the excitement? Where was my chance to be a hero? So yeah, it was a very different war in a different time where people were hoping it would have taken a little bit longer.
And one of the things that we see in this movie, in the scene that you just talked about, Big D, we see it depicted how America is pretty quick to deploy guys, armed guys, overseas into areas that they don't really understand the politics of or understand the language of, and sort of impose will in very dangerous ways. And one thing that I'm learning as I get older is those voices, Big D, that we listened to in the 80s and the 90s, whether it was in movies or music, that seemed hyperbolic. Like I was like, okay, this music's pretty cool, but this guy's a little off his rocker. I'm starting to question, like, maybe they weren't so far off. You talk about Rage Against the Machine or Bob Dylan or Frank Zappa, when they're like, hey, the U.S. is an imperialist force. We are an empire. We're going all around the world trying to police it. Team America kind of addressed that, right? Mm-hmm. It's true. Bad guys in the movies were saying it all through the 80s. And we were like, yeah, well, they're bad guys. Like, they don't understand America the way we do. We're not that bad. But watching that scene you just mentioned, Big D, and this movie as a whole, as an adult, I'm understanding that, yeah, I mean, we kind of are an imperialist, hypocritical force. Does that mean we can't do good? No. And that's what's the complexity of this film. We did kick the Iraqis out of Kuwait. We freed Kuwait, absolutely. But we shouldn't kid ourselves about how we did it.
Well, you're convoluting two things. There is America as the country, as what our intent was, and then the fine boots on the ground. Sometimes they're a little disjointed. They aren't exactly. I've mentioned this before, and I don't want to besmirch my fellow service members, but at the front lines, there's not always our best and brightest. So we see here, Gene, that they're partying, they're having fun, and you might think, does this happen? And I can only speak to the second Gulf War. And even though I did not deploy, I was 7 days away from it. I had my DCUs, and I missed the stop-loss order just by luck. Right? I had a choice. They said, we'd like you to come with you, but I'd already turned in my gear. And I said, I'm not the most religious man, but I believe if there was a higher power and I was meant to go, you would have put this order out 7 days ago. And luckily I moved to Florida. My neighbor was Vanessa. It led me down this path. But my unit that deployed, I stayed in touch with them. And it was a bit wild, Gene. In the beginning of the war, it was a little Wild West, the second one. And one of the squads in my company, the entire chain of command was relieved because they had stolen some SUVs, basically carjacking Iraqis. They had found alcohol. They were driving around. And as a combat engineer, I was a 12 Bravo. So we were trained at obstacle installment and then also obstacle removal and demolition. I was going to pull out my engineer handbook here and do some calculations for you, but I forgot it. I was trained to blow up bridges, blow up structures. But my roommate and fellow sergeant came back telling stories about how they would come upon safes in buildings. And the infantry would say, hey, get the engineers, come in here. We're going to blow the safe. And he said they were sitting down with like a sketch pad. We've never blown a safe. That's not our job. And them trying to figure out how much C4 to blow a safe off. He said they blew about 4 safes up where there was nothing left but a smoldering, burning like papers. It could have been like, it could have been proof of weapons of mass destruction, but instead it was the Wild West of just crazy shit going on. And I don't know that it would all be out in the open, but there were pockets of this crazy partying and just loose cannons.
If they had James Caan, every single one of those safes would be cracked clean. We would know where all the bunkers are, all the bullion. It's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, there would have some beautiful scenes of safe cracking. Instead, they were shooting like safes into the neighboring communities and going through the walls. But besides the soldiers, we're seeing the Iraqis, the civilians. The other big player in this opening scene is the media. And you think back to 99, you had the 24-hour cable news network. There was not the internet like it is today where people would go online to find their news. You would sit there and listen to whether it's Fox or CNN, reporting what they said was the truth. And they were always looking for the stories of the heroes and the good stories out in the battlefield. They wanted to find something they could sell. And the movie does a great job of capturing that. The reporters battling for the story. They didn't see what was really going on.
I'd like to take a moment to dispel the myth of, quote unquote, the media. This is happening a lot on like Facebook and Instagram where I have these arguments with people. Huge waste of time. I know it. And I hear it all the time in daily life. Like, oh, the media just wants to do this, or, oh, it's the media's fault. Media is not a monolith. Okay. It's made up of lots of different types of journalism. That's why it's called media. Some of it's not even really journalism. And there is good journalism being done out there. I'd argue it's mostly print journalism, but there is some good multimedia stuff happening. But there are thousands of reporters around the world that take their jobs very seriously and do not have an agenda. They're not going to the theatrics that Big D's talking about. TV people tend to do it a bit more. Internet personalities, don't even get me started. But a lot of journalists like me go to school for journalism, and their dream is just to inform people about the world around them and empower them to participate in a democracy. So next time you're thinking about using the term the media, be a little bit more specific, right? The TV media, or even a specific outlet like OAN, and call them out.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about the famous war correspondents of like the 40s, the first couple world wars. Those reporters were out there trying to find the true story. But I, ironically, somehow got looped into this, Gene, so I got to see it from the other side. Like I mentioned, I separated 7 days before my unit deployed. Then we were out at a bar. Me, my friends in Florida, were watching TV, and out there is George Bush talking about shock and awe. And they're talking about an incident at one of the bases. It was Camp Pennsylvania in Kuwait. And I'm like, I know that guy. They're showing some grainy footage of an American soldier on his knees. And I said, I fucking know that guy. And they're like, you're full of shit. I said, I'll bet you a case of beer. It turned out to be correct. It was a soldier I had served with for 3.5 years. His name was Mark Cools. After September 11th, he suspiciously had changed his name to Hassan Akbar. He
Red
was
flag.
Yeah, exactly. He started collecting guns, private firearms off base, which was a no-no. He deployed, and then on March 23rd, in the middle of the night, he was supposed to be on guard duty. He walked into the command tent, and he threw a grenade, shot up. I think he killed an Air Force captain. He killed someone else he shot. There were 2 soldiers dead and 14 injured. They were really showing the combat engineers and the Army in a bad light on TV, particularly CNN at that point, and trying to say, was this showing more of the morale of the troops? Was there a bigger message behind this one incident? So I wrote in and I submitted a picture of him that I had taken earlier when we served. And I said, listen, don't try to take him as the average 101st Airborne soldier. This was a person who had had multiple issues with behavior. He had been moved around between the companies and platoons. They started hard pressing me, Gene. They had producers, Don Mattingly from CNN. I think his name was Mattingly something. They're like, we could fly him out. We will film you in silhouette. We want to come out there. And they were hard pressing to get me on camera. And this was the biggest news story of the day.
I thought you were talking about the baseball coach.
No. I think his name was Don. No, I think his name was Don Mattingly. Let me see. What was his name? Again, now I'm going back 20 years. Phil Mattingly? Okay, it was Phil Mattingly. Yes. Not Don Mattingly. Phil Mattingly. Yeah, so Phil Mattingly they were coming out. They were going to film me in like the silhouette. And I thought better of it. I said, this is a bad idea. They're going to know who I am. They're going to call me back. And my Florida vacation will be over. And then the news cycle will turn. And I will just be standing in the desert wondering why I couldn't have kept my mouth shut.
One thing I've learned as I've gotten older is everyone's got a job to do, right? And Dalen, pardon me while I go on a little bit of a tangent here, but the military has a very specific job to do, and they should do it to the best of their ability. And part of that job involves not being loose-lipped about stuff and also not portraying the military in a bad light, right? Similarly, the press has a job. And I think in a lot of these 80s and 90s movies, we see the press being very, very annoying. And we got movies like Die Hard where they get like hit with stun guns and shit because they're being a pain in the ass. But if you think about it, the military, the government, they're given incredible power, incredible budgets, right? The police, same sort of thing. And anytime you're giving anybody that much power and that much money, you need to have a check on them. You need to have somebody watching them, right? Who watches the Watchmen sort of thing. And so I think that it is fair to do this sort of a depiction like Three Kings does, where you have a journalist who really does earnestly want the story. She doesn't want to do stories about the sad pelicans, right? She wants to know what's really going on.
No.
But at the same time, she is being incredibly dramatic and theatrical and standing when bullets are flying and getting in the way. And so I would say that this is a very responsible way to look at it, unlike a Die Hard.
And also the angle that she is the older aging reporter, not willing to fuck Gates or other military like the leadership to get the story. So you're getting her feeling like she has to do something she's morally against. So there is that dichotomy of showing the different sides of the press that I think, yes, don't paint everybody with that broad stroke.
Well, Gates, Conrad, Troy, and Elgin find the gold and stumble on the interrogation of Iraqi rebel Amir Abdullah. As they leave, Amir's wife is executed by the Iraqi Republican Guard, triggering a firefight. The Americans pull out just as Iraqi reinforcements arrive, but blunder into a minefield under a gas attack and get separated. Iraqi soldiers capture Troy, while a group of rebels rescue the other Americans and take them to their underground hideout. There, Conrad, Elgin, and Archie agree to help the rebels and their families reach the Iranian border after they rescue Troy.
So earlier you mentioned what starts them off on this gold chase. It is hilarious. It is original. It's the ass map, Gene. They're strip searching the soldiers and they find the map in the guy's ass. And to show you the level of stupidity, Conrad says, "Do you think he ate it?" No, he didn't eat it and shit it out. But that leads to Gates finds the map. He's the one who knows the true value. And for most of the movie, Gates, he's disenfranchised. He's getting out. He didn't ascend the ranks. He's going to go home. He's out of the military. And he's been cynical. He's an opportunist. He's having sex with the one reporter, lying to her that she's going to get a story when she's not. And he's looking to make a couple extra bucks for retirement. He's all for it, Gene. He's all, let's make this happen. Then all of a sudden, we get down into the town. We see what's going on, that it's not going to be a simple in and out, get the gold, leave. And he grows a conscience. And, he decides in America, we can still be the hero. And I don't think it's how people change. He does it so quick. And the film spent so much time tearing down this idea of the American soldier as this noble savior in the desert. And now it seemed like they wanted to rebuild it. I feel like it was forced. Like the studio said, we cannot completely show the American soldiers in a bad light. We have to have a minor little redemption arc. And I don't feel it was earned. Even the other members of his group kind of call him out. They're like, what the fuck happened to In and Out? What the fuck happened to not getting involved? They even call out this change of heart as not feeling genuine.
I respect that the film at least made an attempt to explain this, though, because if you look at Archie's motto for all this, right, it's that what's the most important thing? Necessity. And I think that he sees that the Iraqis have a necessity to stop an uprising. They don't care about what the Americans are there for. He sees himself as having the necessity to get that gold. And the things that transpire during that experience create the necessity to step in and get involved. Let's not discount the fact that this man just watched a woman get her brains blown out just because he wanted to make some money. And I think that's a little bit different, right? So he's special forces. He's disillusioned, as you mentioned. He's probably seen some shit. But those types of things in war, I imagine you could attribute to war as hell. Like shit happens, people die, right? Guys getting blown up and bombed. But when your personal lust for riches directly leads to someone's execution, I can see that it changes you. Do I think that it's super realistic, Big D? No, I agree with you. It is not probable, right? But I feel like they at least made an attempt to explain it, as opposed to him just being like, and then making a change of heart.
You see, but mine is more subtle. Like when they first get out and they get into the ice cream truck and they're going to drive, they would have made it out of town. They wouldn't have seen her get shot. They would have been gone. But he stops to be like, hey, let's see what's going on here. You know what's going on here, Gates. Put your head down and leave. So the fact that he stopped to allow himself to see this and be affected, if maybe later on we learned the reason why he was so disenfranchised, there had been things strategically that he had to do that he didn't agree with, but we don't get any of that.
I mean, if we want to take that a step further, Big D, also, it's not like the Republican Guard's going to be stupid enough to execute a woman in front of American soldiers during a ceasefire. They would just wait until they were gone. It's not worth
would have
it.
Been hugging. They're like, everybody's free. What a good.
Just giving her all the milk.
Yeah.
But that does pose a question that this film beautifully illustrates, even if it answers it a bit melodramatically, which is it ethical to take the gold while abandoning the people? And this sounds cold-hearted. I promise, guys, I'm not a cynic. But for every bunker you are liberating in Iraq, there are probably hundreds more where people are being tortured and killed. You can't go around the country freeing everybody. Also, you don't know why those people are locked up. Yes, they could be rebel leaders. It could be a rapist. It could be a murderer. You don't know. And your intervention could have unintended consequences down the line. What if it triggers off a whole war? What if thousands of American soldiers die because of your little firefight? Okay. The gold, it's a known thing. It makes a difference in your life. You go home with $23 million, things are going to be different, right? And you know for a fact that gold was stolen from Kuwait. So it is not Saddam's to have. Okay. So I just found myself asking the question that the movie is asking. Is it wrong if things had not gone sideways, right? Is it wrong to just take the gold and leave the people of Iraq to fend for themselves? I don't know.
I mean, this goes back to another one of our war films, very different, Saving Private Ryan. What did Carpazzo learn? You can't save every child because it reminds you of your niece. You can't do that. Gene, you and I both love animals. We would like to save every animal on the planet, but we can't. That's out of our reach. And this is the old trolley car dilemma. They don't have enough information, like you said, to make a decision, or even if they believe it's the moral decision. Maybe, like you said, these were actual criminals. Maybe these people, not that you deserve to be tortured, but maybe this wasn't a case of just innocent, the rebels being interrogated. We don't know that. But once you choose to act, Gene, you can't undo that. You choose to change the path of the train, what track it's on, and you're responsible for it. And there's a turn here, Gene. We started off with them yahoos having a party out in the sand. It is the saddest version of Lee Greenwood's Proud to be an American, where we have Mark Wahlberg dressed in Iraqi garb. It is a shit show. And the movie's fun. Like you mentioned, the Nerf footballs with the C4, and they're shooting, like the cow explodes in the desert. The moment that they find the gold, this film changed so dramatically. Three Kings, goes, when we say dark comedy, it goes dark. The fun turns into this greedy mission, and it just collides with the realities of war. The soldiers, they're looting the Kuwaiti gold. They're joking. They're having fun. They're stealing. It's hijinks. They stumble upon that torture room, and all of a sudden, the fun is gone. It is a war crime unfolding right in front of them. The moment you mentioned that Amir's wife, she's begging, and she hits the ground, and the blood is pouring out. She's gotten executed in front of you. The film just pulls the rug out from under you. The Gold Rush adventure is gone. Now there's a dark tale. And looking back, I don't know what I must have thought about this at the time. I don't think I understood what was the meta-commentary on war, on like the decisions we're talking about. What do you do? But it was such a shocking turn that it was a brave choice coming just a couple years after the first Gulf War.
I thought it was going to get a lot darker in that scene. So we get a couple people get shot. Thankfully, none of the Americans are killed. But I was kind of surprised. I thought the Americans were going to end up wiping out the entire Republican Guard unit at that point. It seemed like the thing to do, right? They were very cool-headed about it because they know they've broken the ceasefire. So they can't have witnesses. They don't have the logistical ability to take the Republican Guard prisoners. And by the way, if they showed up back at camp with a bunch of Republican Guard prisoners, there would be questions. The Republican Guard has already fired on them. I'm like, don't you have to kill them all?
Yeah, I mean, it makes
what would
sense.
You do?
Well, I mean, they're all going to jail.
Yeah.
I mean, they've chosen to become war criminals. They break the treaty. They're stealing the gold. At this point, Gene, is there, you got family at home? I would believe they would waste the entire village. They wouldn't let anybody be standing.
Yeah, I agree. And regardless of how dark it gets, this movie definitely does get dark in a hurry, like you said. And Three Kings is described as a black comedy or a dark comedy. I'm not so sure it is. According to the Oxford Dictionary, a black comedy is a film that deals with tragic or distressing subject matter in a humorous way. So the subject matter is tragic or distressing, and it uses humor to deal with it. And I agree, the subject matter in Three Kings is tragic and it is distressing, but I don't know that it deals with it in a humorous way. Like, there are jokes in this movie, but they're not the type that poke satirical fun. There are absurd moments, but they're absurd in the way that Heart of Darkness is absurd, right? Because it's so real and so strange that these things happen in war and don't in the normal world. Heathers, that's a black comedy. Teenage suicide, don't do it. You know, With Nail and I, a black comedy. They share a certain vibe that takes something awful like drug addiction or alcoholism or a killing spree and makes it funny by making it nihilistic and removing the gravity from the tale. Three Kings, it has plenty of gravity. It never loses its dread. So when it does attempt to be funny, like when Ice Cube throws a C4 football at a helicopter and blows it up, or two guys are punching each other in the middle of a gas attack, I didn't laugh. Like, it was uncomfortable. It wasn't amusing.
No, and I think the other issue is everyone needs to seem like they're from the same world. Everyone, you have the American soldiers, you have the Iraqi soldiers, but the rebels, the local people, they seem like they're out of a normal film. And they're dealing with soldiers on either end that are the parody of the professional soldier, and they're caught in the middle. You almost needed them to be of a similar, just a little quirkier, the way they responded to the situation. It felt very odd and disjointed, and it was one of the problems that I had with the film.
Well, Troy is taken back to the bunker and secretly calls his wife on a micro attack, telling her to report his location to his local Army Reserve unit. He is dragged to an interrogation room and tortured by Iraqi Captain Saeed. The Americans and the rebels persuade Iraqi army deserters to sell them luxury cars stolen from Kuwait. They use the cars to impersonate Saddam's entourage and scare away the guards at the bunker where Troy is held. They free Troy, who spares Saeed, and find more Shiite dissidents held in the dungeon. In the battle, Troy's lung is punctured and Conrad is fatally shot.
So we've said this many times. We are not a professional podcast. And even though Dalen, he was kind in saying that we, the way we sound is, we've refined the art. We are not professional film critics. So we're never going to pretend to understand what is really going on behind the scenes. But after you've done this for 500 films, for thousands of hours, Gene, I think we've become good at feeling where a film is going and understanding the expectations of people who are writing the script and their intent for the arcs of these characters. And there's nothing better than being surprised. So when we get Barlow and Saeed, they're finding common ground. They're talking about their kids, their families. And I'm like, oh, fuck, here's where they connect. Here's where they understand, we're all just soldiers. We're being manipulated by the big war machine. And thankfully, it never happens. Three Kings, it's flawed, Gene, but it isn't always predictable, which is one of the strengths of the film. Captain Gates later on gives this grand speech. He's trying to get them to turn over this fleet of luxury vehicles that they need to do this raid at the end. And he's talking about, we could all be American freedom soldiers. We're going to set Iraq free on the right path. And the refugees are cheering, and Saddam's, his guards are cheering, and the luxury cars are there. And then the reality hits where the guy says, you still need to buy the cars. And those little moments surprised me, where I thought they were going to spoon feed the audience about trying to show the parallels between both sides. It's not the soldiers' fault, it's the government's.
Yeah, I was really glad that the movie grounded itself from time to time, especially when it acknowledged America's failure to make good on promises. Like, this was a very bold stance to be taking, even in 1999. And kind of a thing that most Americans don't really think about, but a thing that we do quite often as a military, right? We cannot, in good conscience, urge people to rise up against tyranny and then abandon them when they do so. And this is a little personal for me, Big D. as a Kurd. So the Kurds have a long history of rising up against tyranny and not having the support that was promised to them. And it goes back through multiple generations. But a couple examples. 1972, the U.S. armed the Kurds, and they were like, hey, fight against Saddam, because Iraq and Iran were at war, and the U.S. was friends with Iran at the time, right? And so the Kurds are like, yeah, okay. And they take their weapons, and they start to fight against Baghdad. They start to fight the Iraqi government. Iran and Iraq had a border dispute. They settled that dispute. They wrote out a treaty. And as soon as they did, the U.S. was like, okay, well, we don't really need you anymore, Kurds. Henry Kissinger was like, we're cutting off the weapons. And the Kurds told him, if you do so, we will die. We've been fighting the Iraqi government. And now if we're cut off, if Iran's not giving us weapons and you're not giving us weapons, we will die. And that's exactly what happened. Baghdad went in and they slaughtered people, right? My people. And then after the Gulf War, what we're seeing in this movie, not as directly, but George Bush, he called on the Iraqis, as they said in the movie, to rise up against Saddam. And the Kurds led that. In the north, in the south, they launched rebellions against the Iraqi government, but there was no U.S. support. So they were put down again, this time with sarin gas. Entire villages were wiped out. And it's funny, we have a saying in Kurdish that is, we have no friends but the mountains, because that's how many times we've been fucked over by other people.
And that interrogation scene, Gene, that is unexpectedly brutal in all of these jokes and funny moments. You think that Barlow and Saeed, they're going to connect. No, it is the complete opposite. And like you said, it's the hammer that we needed to pull us back and to really reinforce that message of the reality of the ugliness of war. And when he is pouring that motor oil down his throat at the moment that you thought they were going to become friends, and we realize that the entire war comes down to one thing. It's oil. It's the most powerful. It's blunt. It's unforgettable. And the visuals of it in these two men who you thought were connecting and you realize the big picture, it's another one of those unexpected moments that really hits home.
Yeah, the scenes with Saeed reveal some uncomfortable and strange quirks about war. And I'm going to use this reference again, but Heart of Darkness, like there are moments in Three Kings where we just see how strange the reality of war is, particularly related to the United States. Saeed was trained by Americans, right? He knows English. He knows how to use American weapons, because then the U.S. was using Iraq to fight Iran, just jumping over the border and switching side. He consumes American pop culture. You know, what's wrong with Michael Jackson, right? Similarly, Troy killed an Iraqi, as you mentioned, Big D, at the beginning of the movie. He didn't know what side that guy was on, what that guy's motives were, what his identity were. He didn't know if he was supposed to be shooting, but he did. And Americans, it's called out in this movie, casually bomb shit all around the world. Yeah. But consider when a bomb explodes in America. And I'm not talking about one that fell from the sky, just an explosion. It is pandemonium. We consider it a horror. And yes, Big D, you talked about the similarities. It is cliche, but it's also true that soldiers generally have more in common with one another than they do with the people who sent them to war, the people who are in charge of the entire operation. And the movie calls out that there is no clean way to fight a war, that bombing kills people. It ruins cities. It mentally scars everyone involved, even the people dropping the bombs, right? So in this sense, they developed this incredible duality where the soldiers are both innocent and guilty, right? Is it Saeed's fault that he has to torture Troy? No. Is it Saeed's fault that he invaded Kuwait? No. Is it Troy's fault that Saeed's son died? No. But also yes, because you're a part of this. Yeah. Well, Archie radios Walter for transport while Army officers at base camp try to locate the trio after getting a message from Troy's wife. Each of the rebels is given a bar of gold, and the rest is buried as they wait for the transport to arrive. The convoy goes to the Iranian border, where the three Americans intend to escort the rebels across to a refugee camp. American helicopters arrive, and Archie, Elgin, and Troy are arrested while the rebels are recaptured. Archie offers the buried gold to the American officers in exchange for letting the refugees through, and the commanding officer acquiesces to assisting the rebels into Iran, but says charges and courts-martial will be convened against Archie, Troy, and Chief Elgin. So, Dalen, you mentioned George Clooney being here for Ash. Ash, of course, is not on the podcast, so I will take her place on this one. I vividly remember George Clooney mania from my teen years. Okay. 1999, he was very hot at this time. He was Batman. He was in Coen Brothers movies. George Clooney was in Dusk Till Dawn. He was in the Ocean series. He was everything. Women wanted him. Men wanted to be him. But it's been almost 30 years here, okay? I had forgotten what it was like to see George Clooney on screen in his prime. He is somehow tough without being macho. He's sexy without being provocative. And he is so good in this movie as Archie Gates, the sort of cool-headed super soldier that really commands the world around him. He is what you would expect of a special forces officer. And really beyond all that, I just really wanted to touch him through the screen, like touch his face and his hair. He just looks amazing. And when he dropped that line about having to do a thing you're scared shitless of doing and then getting the courage after, I was thinking, yes, sir.
Yes. But yeah, he's a chameleon. You mentioned who could get into that bat suit with the nipples and then turn around and become this disenfranchised captain in the middle of a war, or some of the roles that he takes later on in his career, The Perfect Storm, or even Oh Brother, Wherefore Art Thou? You know, he's taking some really diverse roles. And we've talked about Paul Newman and Robert Redford lately. Is he the Paul Newman or Robert Redford of our generation? If not him, Gene, who?
Brad Pitt.
But we need older Brad Pitt. We need to see how that grape, how it ages.
Yeah.
Clooney, we've seen it. We've seen the young, hot doctor in Grey's Anatomy. Up until now, he's the gray-haired, senior generation actor. Brad Pitt has a chance to be that. But right now, there's nobody else. I can't think of any other actors that you would put up there on stage to take the helm of like I don't know, what do we call Newman and Redford? What are they? The gentlemen of our time? What are they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody else.
What about Leonardo DiCaprio?
Nah, he's been huffing his own farts a bit too much. He's a little too high on his own supply. He's that whole the whole Leo with the girls. I think you've never seen Clooney do that. Clooney takes himself serious.
As an epilogue, the film reveals Archie, Troy, and Chief Elgin are cleared of charges and honorably discharged thanks to Adriana's reporting. Archie goes back to work as a military advisor for Hollywood action films. The chief leaves his airport job to work with Archie, and Troy returns to his wife and baby and runs his own carpet store. The stolen gold is returned to Kuwait, which claims that some is missing, implying that the rebels managed to keep the gold they had been given.
So Dalen mentioned that he thought the film starts off strong, and then at the final third of the film, it starts to struggle, and I have to agree. It's almost as if they were like, okay, how do we tie this up so people leave the theater with a positive memory of this film? Because it blew my mind, Gene. Do you know what the fresh rating is on this film?
I do know, because I saw that and I was shocked as well. 96%.
Yes, and the fan grade or whatever they call, because the professional critics, I saw it was a 94, 96. The fans is a 77. So they were trying to have people leave the theater not only upset about the profound message and the portrayal of American soldiers as these Wild West yahoos and not the professional, what would you call them? The purveyors of freedom around the world. So this epilogue comes in, and on the heels of Delta Force, I'm feeling a lot of parallels here that I don't think was intended, and I might not have felt in any other order of our films. We've got this patriotic music, and the Americans are pretending like everything's worked out. The gold, it's mysteriously missing. Archie now becomes a Hollywood military advisor. And it feels like this is a nod to his stories in the film. And also, we commented in Delta Force that they needed a military expert. I think they could have used Archie in that role. Chief now quits his job at the airport. He's going to join Archie. Troy goes back to the carpet store, because real life isn't like the movie, and he's got his wife and the family. And it is this fittingly sarcastic way to wrap up the film that we've spent 2 hours tearing war apart and the myths. But the movie, it's too upbeat. I thought the movie was going to end with like a America, fuck yeah. Like kind of a down one, but instead they give us a wink to like, hey, yeah, war sucks, but fuck yeah, we're still awesome. I thought it was a bit too much on the nose and a bit too much of a positive patriotic epilogue.
Now, I know that this movie was largely rewritten. Like David O. Russell, the director, rewrote the film, put himself down as basically the screenplay writer, even though he wasn't the originator of the idea for the film. And I wonder if the original story was different, right? And I'm not trying to retcon the movie, but I feel like I can see where it was patched over, right?
Yeah,
and one of the points
that they had to make.
One of the points that was strange to me was that Troy survived and Conrad died. Like I could definitely see them being like, it did, like audiences would not like that if Troy died. But let's think about this from the perspective of pushing forward the points you just made, Big D. Conrad, we already saw his ass get blown up in the Humvee with the mine going off. Okay, he fucked up, and he's the type of guy. I think we can all agree that some people just survive war, even though they're not particularly good soldiers, just by fucking dumb luck, and some good soldiers die. Right? Troy would have a much bigger impact at the absurdity and the nihilism of this film. He was the whole reason they went back on the rescue mission, right? He's the one with a family back home. He's the one that was most reluctant to raid the bunker. They just want to get the fuck out of there. He's the one that put the Kevlar on, right? Instead, we've got this man living for hours after being shot in the chest. And what does he got to do? Just turn the valve every 15 minutes, right? And he'll stay alive. Imagine the impact if he's the one that died. And then you've got Conrad, Elgin, and Archie being the ones who have to decide if they give up the goal to save the refugees.
Fuck yes. And I feel like that's what happened because they give us the 2 Iraqi soldiers who choose to return after everybody flees. So the first one pops up. We've almost forgotten about the second. The first one, without a doubt, should have shot Conrad. Conrad goes down. We have forgotten about the second one. They're all like, oh, you're okay. You're going to survive. And then boom, Barlow gets it. They have to carry his body. Think about that final scene. I know, Conrad was a member of the squad and the platoon, but they didn't give a shit about him. No. They didn't care about him or Jamie Kennedy. Either one of those dudes could have died. Nobody would have lost sleep. Carrying Barlow to the border, that would have had some impact.
Yes.
They wouldn't have been yucking it and making jokes as they walk through the desert. I agree. That would have been a much more profound ending.
And the other problem I have with this epilogue is that an epilogue, unless you're Halloween, you have to write that into a sequel. Okay. It closes off the possibility for a sequel unless the sequel is going to be about a carpet store and making movies, right? If they wanted to do a sequel of Three Kings, which I 100% would watch, I would watch that in a heartbeat, right? They go back to Iraq for the second Iraq war. Now they'd have to explain how Archie, Elgin, and Troy end up back in Iraq after taking up jobs in Hollywood and opening a carpet business, okay? Ice Cube, they asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, I think it'd be a good idea. George H.W. Bush started Gulf War I. We did Three Kings. George W. Bush started Gulf War II. We should do Three Kings 2 and go back. And while I was looking at that, I found that there was a story that David O. Russell, the director, tells where he met George W. Bush in 1999. And they were talking about this movie. And George W. Bush told him, I guess I'll just have to go back and finish the job, won't I? Would you want a sequel to this, Big D?
In like 99 or 2000? Fuck yes, 100%. I would want mission accomplished. I would want them to go back. But now, no, I'm glad they didn't because look at even some of the stronger franchises. The sequels, they really struggle to match the first. And this one's a bit flawed. It could have gone really, really wrong. And there were stories about conflicts behind the scenes, about the director being really difficult to work with, and Clooney actually punching him in the face because he was rude to some of the extras. I don't think you could have gotten this group back together again. And with the message being so muddied, you would have had to have a stronger hand come in to write it, to really close up the chapter. What would you bring them back in Gulf War II? Like they were, maybe they were contractors. Maybe they were brought in by Halliburton to go in and do personal security.
No. Okay. So Troy Barlow gets pulled in to do carpet at a base. And at the same time, they bring on then they bring on Archie and Elgin as Special Forces advisors because they have deep knowledge of the bunkers at Karbala. And then they find out about, this time instead of gold, it's bearer bonds. And they're going to go steal some bearer bonds from Saddam's palace.
No, I think it would have been like some Blackwater reps. They show up on the scene of the film. They get Gates and they get them to go back. We need you because of your extensive knowledge of the bunkers and the bases.
Three Kings 2, it's Saeed Says. Okay, Saeed goes to the U.S. and he's planting bombs everywhere.
It's revenge. I like it.
Yeah, you got your black sidekick. It's perfect.
Yes, I like it.
All right, now is the time of the podcast to give our Shat score for Three Kings. The Shat scores are where we're telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's finding an Iraqi ass map, and 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It's when Saddam is coming to kill you. I'll go first. I was really entertained, Big D. I was enthralled. I did not look away from the screen once. This movie captures your attention and it holds it the whole time. But this is a strange movie where it is billed as a black comedy, and the comedy is what hurts it. It's a weaker movie for the laughs. I think this would have been a brilliant drama, an exceptional action movie. If David O. Russell played it as a straight action movie with some dramatic elements and a clear political view, this movie would hit hard. I would be a big fan of it. At that point, it would probably be a 1 wiper for me. But in honesty, I got to go 2 wipes here, Dalen.
So, Gene, I'm going to go a little lower than I think 2.25. I think part of the issue is it was too close to the actual Gulf War and the tension that was going on in the Middle East. It was hard to portray the American soldiers as inept, as unprofessional and undisciplined as the film does. You could today go back. It's like the way we would in the 90s go back to Vietnam. Today, you could do this film and this story justice and make it a true dark comedy. Back then, it was a little too close to home. It was a little too early to make a joke about it. You can't do a dark parody of like September 11th. We're not even prepared for that right now. You know, to do a yuck of the, of Barlow and the crew trying to stop 9/11.
Will we ever be prepared for that, Big D?
Sure. I mean, we have 1942.
A September 11th comedy?
Yes, there's a comedy, 1942. Somebody was going to commission it, where it's a comedy about the Japanese trying to attack the West Coast of the United States.
Fair. Okay.
Yes, there is a potential one day where the towers are a source of comedic jokes in film, but thankfully we're not there. So I think for everything, the end feels a bit forced. I think 2.25 wipes. It's not the 96% that Rotten Tomatoes says, but the first half is fun. It's a fun ride.
All right. Well, with 2 wipes from me and 2.25 wipes from you, Big D, that gives us an average wipe score of 2.125 wipes for Three Kings.
So, Gene, with a score of 2.125, that now places us in the 198 spot, slightly better than The Final Countdown, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Go, Gattaca, and slightly worse than Do the Right Thing, Austin Powers, The Spy That Shagged Me, and The Wedding Singer. Middle of the pack.
It's pretty strong, honestly.
Yeah.
We often forget that anything above 2.5, it's a pretty strong movie.
God, and I didn't even talk about how likable Mark Wahlberg was. He's not that insufferable, pompous asshole he is today. Back there, young Wahlberg, Boogie Nights Wahlberg, he was perfect for this role.
I was going to say, he's doing that Dirk Diggler voice. I like that. Yeah, it's kind of fluttering confidence in his voice. It was good. It's good.
You can't say that, Conrad. That's not appropriate. You can't say that. An appropriate substitute would be Towelhead or Camel Jockey, Conrad. He was perfect.
All right. Well, thanks, Dalen. Hope you enjoyed the score. Before we close out, we've got one special voicemail coming straight from the White House.
Shat crew, Donald Trump here, just saying I'm a huge fan of the show. Inauguration's coming up, and we're all about Shat. We're looking into Shat. What can we do for Shat? It's been very stressful. The show is very relaxing. A lot of people saying it's the best relaxing show. People are also saying Big D, obviously the best of the bunch, followed by Ash. Gene is obviously last place. Sorry, Gene. It's just, we were looking for the best people. But just wanted to say, I like the Shat crew. And that I hope you like the administration that's going to come. It's going to be the best. I promise, Gene. It's going to be really good. You're going to really love it, Gene. Doing this especially for Gene.
I like that a lot of people are saying we're relaxing.
Yeah. This is particularly funny because Donald Trump was on my cousin's podcast. Like the real Donald Trump was on my cousin's podcast. And I feel like I like this Donald Trump a little bit better. So thank you, Shat Donald, for calling in. I really appreciate it. And, it's fair. It's fair. We have our differences, but we're both Americans.
Yes. And I'm glad we're going to be a priority in this administration. It's going to be fantastic.
It's always transactional with him. Everything's transactional.
It is. Maybe we'll get him on one day.
All right. Let's go for one more voicemail. This one comes from Chris calling in about Excalibur.
Hey guys, it's Chris Smith here. I'm the guy whose brother called up recently about his wedding and for the shout out. And I just wanted to say a massive thanks to what you guys said. Both me and my now wife listened to it and particularly liked your advice, Big D, in regards to being kind. I think that's something that all people could do with, not just in marriage, but in all walks of life. Anyway, to the matter at hand, there was a mention of Excalibur by my brother, and I am happy to confirm I've just sent over the commission fee for that, and this is going to be a birthday present for my dad for his 60th that me and my other two brothers, Mike and Ollie, have chipped in for. Now, this film was absolutely famous in our household growing up. I'm pretty sure for my dad it was the sexual awakening that you described, Big D, growing up at a time where him and his four brothers had no access to Pornhub or anything like that. This film sort of operated as soft porn and battles. I think it's something that most boys of that age and that era growing up really, really got their teeth stuck into, for lack of a better phrase. I remember probably watching it for the first time when I was about 9 or 10 and being all about the battle scenes and feeling quite uncomfortable watching the amount of buttocks that occur within this film and the amount of thrusting that goes on. Like I alluded to earlier, is just total soft porn. Particularly the Lancelot Guinevere, Morgana Arthur, and the problematic Uther Igraine scene, which I think would raise a couple of issues with our social justice warrior Gene over there. Anyway, I just wanted to see what you guys would think about it. Like I said, it's my dad's favourite film. He still goes on about it and quotes it all the time. I think it's one of the only films that makes him cry on the regular. But yeah, I would love to see what you guys think and whether this still stands a test of time. For me, I think it's a fantastic film. I'd say solidly 1.5 wipes and above. I think it's of the era. But yeah, thanks for all you do, and we'd love to see what you think about it. Thanks again.
Gene, I think Excalibur is the type of film that many men of that generation said, I like it for the battle scenes. And they were full of shit. That was the only way. Are you sitting up again tonight, honey, to watch Excalibur? Oh, I gotta tell you, those battle scenes are great. The magic is fantastic. I like the sorcery. No, young Helen Mirren, Gene. Morgana. We had some, like, what do they call them? The shapeshifters, or what is the character we've done with before?
Shapeshifters, yes.
No, the one, what do they call them? It's where there's another word for it. Where
succubus?
Yes, the succubus. Where the succubus will seduce you. I could know that Morgana is a succubus or an evil sorceress who's going to kill me, and I could not resist her. Glorious.
Grab your sleeping bags, boys.
Fuck. I don't know. I'm going to make it into my sleeping bag, Gene.
How does it stack up compared to, like, let's say, Lady Hawk?
Oh, no. This is, if I remember correctly, again, I haven't seen it. It's much darker. The action is good. The music is iconic. It is done in a tasteful way where it's got that weird lens flare to where it feels forbidden. It feels as if you shouldn't be watching it, and it's not age appropriate, and it's not like hardcore, but it's done in a very sexual way. It's a very erotic film, Gene.
Got it. I'm sold and glad we're doing it. All right, Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, we go from the deserts of Iraq to a Manhattan cafe where word processor Paul meets and talks literature with Marcy. Later that night, Paul takes a cab ride to Marcy's downtown apartment. His $20 bill flies out the window during the ride. Portends the unexpected night he has. He cannot pay for the ride and finds himself in a series of awkward, surreal, and life-threatening situations. With the colorful cast of characters, he spends the rest of the night trying to return uptown. This sounds a lot like Adventures in Babysitting, but it's not. This was commissioned by Robin H., came out in 85, and surprisingly directed by Martin Scorsese.
After watching The King of Comedy, I am 100% about 80s Scorsese. So thank you, Robin, for the commission. Thank you, Dalen, for commissioning our upcoming film. And thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Why don't you just go home?
I've been asking myself that one all night long.
So what happened? Why can't you?
I met this girl tonight, okay, in a coffee shop.
I feel like something incredible is really going to happen here.
So when I got home, I gave her a call. On the cab on the way down here, all my money flew out the window. I didn't really get along with her that well.
What's the matter?
I said, I want to see a plaster of Paris bagel and cream cheese paperweight. Now cough it up. So I left. Gigi! So I haven't got enough money to get home until I meet this bartender who wanted to lend me the money. That's all right. That's all right. Forget it. That's all right.
Good boy.
So I go back to the girl's apartment, but her roommate's really pissed off at me for the way I treated her friend.
This the guy?
Hi. So I march right in there to apologize. Come on. But she'd already killed herself. I was too late.
Oh, wow.
Lighten up. What is this?
I'm in big trouble. Big trouble.
Now this part, you're going to say, oh, you're lying to me. Don't lie to me. But it's true.
Mohawk this guy.
I couldn't believe that.
It's him.
Tell him, it's not my fault. I didn't do it.
I gotta tell who you didn't do what.
Help! 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 Call the police.
What's with you? Are you nuts or something?
Luckily, there was this girl who saw the whole thing.
You're dead, pal.
And what? So now she's the one in the Mr. Softy ice cream truck who's trying to kill me. They're all trying to kill me. I just wanted to leave. My apartment, maybe meet a nice girl. And now I've got to die for it,
What do you want from me? What have I done? I'm just a word processor, damn it.
Is that all there is?
After Hours, when anything can happen, and usually does.
Is that unbelievable or what?
That's all there is.